Hello, welcome to the video. I'm Marty from Marty's Maps, and in the last video I did my personal interpretation of if the US government were to fall apart, what I think would happen. Today I'm going to be doing something pretty different. It is what if South Africa was an empire? Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm gonna be buffing up South Africa. We can assume that for the past few years they've been building up their military strength, planning to expand their nation as much as possible. Now, just to be clear, this would in no way ever happen realistically. South Africa has very good relations with a lot of its neighboring countries, and other than one or two countries in the area, they would never realistically initiate any conflict with anyone else. But this is under the assumption that, like I said, South Africa was an empire in today's time. I'll be representing South Africa by the color red to show that, it's an empire, and any states that's fighting against as the color blue. So we're going to start off by South Africa declaring war on Lesotho and Eswatini. Now, if you look on a map, you may likely see the name Eswatini for this country, but just a cool little fact, you might also know it as Swaziland. The reason for this is that its official name is Eswatini, but while it was under English rule, it was given the name Swaziland. So by doing this, taking them over these countries is going to be very easy, and the countries will very quickly capitulate under South African rule. After this, we're going to see South Africa moving and declaring war on Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is currently under a bit of a dictatorship, so South Africa would see this as kind of dangerous to their rule. So South Africa is going to start its attack from the southern border, setting up a good front line here. South Africa has plenty of its resources ready, and taking hold of this nation is going to be pretty easy. They'll then make a push up to the capital, taking it with relative ease, and then the rest of the country surrendering. Of course, since this is an empire, all the land which ends up getting annexed or captured by South Africa will instantly become part of its territory, like so. After that, while all of South Africa's troops are in place, they're then going to declare war on Mozambique. And the troops will be able to push quite easily into territory. So we're going to see a lot of this land quickly taken, as well as the capital, which is right down here in the south. Troops will then push over to Malawi, right here, cutting off all of these troops, making it quite easy to take out the rest of them. They'll then push to the Indian Ocean through here, making the rest of this part of the nation quite easy to defeat until they surrender. However, we're going to see something quite interesting happen in Mozambique, as while this part of the country does surrender, the northern or eastern part of the country decides to actually become a vassal of the South African Empire, which will be represented with this color. The vassal state of Mozambique will then be ordered to invade and annex the nations of the Comoros Islands, as well as Malawi, which are both very easy to take, and Malawi very quickly does surrender. Meanwhile, over in the west, we're going to see South Africa declaring war on Namibia. They'll be able to push up with a lot of ease, since Namibia doesn't have much defenses ready for this. And we see South Africa taking a lot of coastal cities, such as here and here, as such, and expanding its military reach through the coastline, like such. Eventually, South Africa is able to take the capital, Windhoek, of Namibia, and once that happens, we're going to see Botswana also joining the war. However, we're going to see Botswana join on South Africa's side as they want to annex Namibia's northern or eastern panhandle, which is this bit right here. They also push their troops into eastern Namibia, like such, setting up a strong front line. With this, Namibia will surrender and be annexed by the entirety of South Africa. Taking the capital is very easy as it's very close to the border, as well as a lot of the surrounding territory and the borders, like such. The northern panhandle is taken back, and Botswana has no choice but to surrender. While all of that was happening, the vassal state of Mozambique and South African troops in the east have been invading major ports in Madagascar. Now the South African troops meet up on the east coast right here and make a swift push towards the capital, successfully taking it, and the rest of Madagascar surrenders to the invading armies. Now, in case you don't know this, Angola is another powerful nation in Africa. It's not as strong as South Africa, especially in this scenario. So Angola is going to be able to put up more of a fight. South Africa takes a lot of southern territory along the border, like so, setting up a pretty strong front line, as well as very quickly pushing up and taking Angola's capital, Luanda. South Africa continues to take major ports and coastline as such, and pushing their front line a little bit further and connecting troops up to here. However, Angola has quite a bit of success in pushing back South African troops back to the border in the southeastern Angola, and even pushing into South African territory. Angola is successful in taking back a lot of its coast as well, and setting up a strong line right here, which cuts through both South African territory and Angolan territory. South Africa is able to push back a bit, take back some lost lands right here, and they now need a plan in order to hit back into Angola. So they decide to cut through Zambia, which they do right here. They push up north, making it to Angolan territory and taking a lot of this land right here. In doing so, Zambia has now joined the war on Angola's side and has made a lot of very successful pushes onto the vassal state of Mozambique and onto South African territory. However, South Africa has had a lot of success due to this maneuver in taking a lot of Angola's territory and moving even further and further around their capital, establishing even more of a defensive line. They then cut through here, making it to the border with the DRC, so that they can much more easily eradicate these troops and take all of this territory. Now, the DRC and South Africa are not in an alliance, but the DRC can see how South Africa, or I should say Angola actually, is losing a lot of land and predicts that Angola won't survive much longer. So they invade and annex this northern territory of Angola. Zambia sees this as a sign of the DRC and South Africa working together, and they predict that the DRC is putting a lot of troops into the southern panhandle. So Zambia sends a lot of their troops to take Lubumbashi, which is right here, cutting off the panhandle and capturing all of it. However, in the process, Zambia has relocated a lot of their troops northward and has now made it very easy for South African armies to take all of this land, and Zambia capitulates to South Africa. With Zambia's surrender, the rest of Angola also surrenders, leaving both nations to be completely taken over by the South African Empire. Now, something that must be decided is what is going to happen between South Africa and the DRC. When Angola surrendered, all of its territory was annexed by South Africa, including this northern territory. However, the DRC has its troops deployed here and is currently occupying it. Similarly, down in the southern panhandle, this land was never officially annexed by Zambia, who no longer exists, but the territory is currently being occupied by South African troops. So the two nations make a deal. First, the two nations agree that the northern territory of Angola will be given to the DRC, which is very beneficial for them as they have gone a lot more coastline. Meanwhile, down in the southern panhandle, the city of Lubumbashi has been given back to the DRC. It was one of the largest cities in the DRC after all. However, the rest of the territory the DRC wasn't really using, so they just gave it to the South African Empire. Now, even for an empire this strong as in this fictional scenario, controlling all this territory is very difficult. The military may be large, but it's starting to be thinned out as it needs to be equally distributed amongst these regions in order to make sure rebellions don't pop up. As one final push, the South African Empire decides it wants to have at least some control over Lake Victoria, which is right here. South Africa declares war on Burundi and sends troops through this lake to very easily take the capital. The rest of the country then surrenders. Tanzania and Rwanda then declare war on South Africa to try to reclaim Burundi and protect themselves. South Africa has a lot of success in capturing all of Rwanda, as well as setting up a strong front line down here in southern Tanzania. They also used their strong navy to capture these islands right off of Tanzania's coastline. South African troops continue to push, reaching Lake Victoria and taking out a large amount of the troops around Lake Victoria. However, during this, Tanzania has a lot of success in taking back lands in the southwest, setting up a good front line here, and also taking some of South Africa's territory. However, the South African and Mozambique armies take the capital of Tanzania, and a lot of the rest of the country capitulates. South African armies are able to take a lot of eastern Tanzania and retake some lost lands. However, some Tanzanian armies and rebellions in Burundi and Rwanda are successful, which makes South Africa lose a lot of their territory up here. South Africa makes a deal with the DRC though, and the DRC assists in helping South Africa maintain territory in Burundi and Rwanda, which helps them take back a lot of this lost land right here. While this is happening, armies in the south and from the east continue traveling further and further to Lake Victoria. And they also are able to capture a lot of the coastline along the lake, which severely limits the capabilities of the Tanzanian army. Eventually, the rest of Tanzania capitulates and the entire country is defeated. However, not all of Tanzania is taken. As stated before, South Africa is trying to make sure that they can control all their territory as such, so they only take the western half of Tanzania so that they have access to Lake Victoria. To compensate and to thank the DRC for their efforts, they also give the DRC a small bit of land right here, which does give them a little bit more lakefront. And even though it's a very small amount, the DRC is still thankful for South Africa's efforts, mainly for the capture of Angola's northern territory. So this is what the new borders with the DRC looks like. And as one final step for the South African Empire, they fully integrate the nation of Mozambique into the South African Empire, like such. We're now going to take a look at how some of the states might be organized throughout the South African Empire. They would need a way of, organizing their nation, and they would likely end up dividing a lot of the former countries into multiple states, just to make it easier to control all of them. I'm not going to be going over names because, I'm not that creative. And we're just going to look over on how I think some of these countries would be divided up. First up, in Namibia, we're going to see, and in Botswana, we're going to see a very straight line placed right here, dividing the two countries in half. Of course, Namibia has lost its panhandle to northern Botswana. Also up here, Angola has also been divided in half, going right through here. And as for Zambia, it's been cut vertically, dividing the former country into two states. Mozambique is also in two different states now, including the state that was primarily annexed by the South African Empire, as well as northern Mozambique, which was the vassal state, who has also received Malawi. The Comoros Islands are also going to be their own state, as well as Madagascar, obviously, as you can see. Western Tanzania, Uganda, and Burundi have all been united under one state, which will likely be called perhaps the West Tanzanian state. And of course, South Africa has also absorbed Lesotho and Eswatini into their own megastate. All these states, I'm sure, would be divided even further into smaller states or into counties or subjects or however you like to imagine it. But that wraps up for how the South African Empire, I think, would expand. They would end up becoming likely a somewhat military allies with the DRC, probably just agreed to a non-aggression pact, maybe even a defense pact. There's a slight chance that Tanzania could become a vassal state, but I consider that very unlikely. They wouldn't like South Africa at all. Before we end off the video, we're going to take one final look at what all of the South African Empire would look like, not divided into different states, and we can see that it would have a lot of Africa and probably also a lot more influence over much of sub-Saharan Africa given enough time. Considering how big this country is, how big its economy could become, and all the military supplies they would have captured and obtained during all the wars, considering all of that, this new South Africa could be close to a global superpower in the world if given a couple of decades to industrialize and such. Anyways, thank you for watching my video. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I have no idea when I'm gonna make the next video, but again, thank you for watching, and bye-bye.